I pick up on energy big time.
Yeah.
And I wish I understood it more, because honestly, Jocelyn, sometimes it's to the point where I'm like, what is wrong with me? I'm like, what is going on? Like, how, like, am I just picking up too much? Am I like reading too much into something? But it would be interesting to learn more about it, because it's sometimes, did you ever feel like that? Like you were almost like something was wrong with you?
Yep. Oh, yep. Oh, yeah.
Really?
That's where I felt Huna really clicked for me, because it helped me to understand what I was feeling. You know, I think like we talked about earlier, like some of us are more in tune and intuitive and empathetic and just more open, you know, highly sensitive, whatever you want to call it. And I think when you don't have any context or way to think about it, it can be crazy feeling, you know, like you feel like, yeah, something's wrong with me. Why am I having so many feelings? I thought, yeah, I was a crazy emotional being for a lot of years when I had no way to regulate it. And then once I learned, oh, having access to energy is actually a good thing if you know what to do with it and how to regulate it, then I started to be able to channel that and do better work with it and use it in my work with other people and better manage myself. And then that's now turned into, you know, intuitions and all kinds of different things. But yeah, absolutely. It definitely at one point felt like I was crazy. Something's wrong with me, you know, because I didn't know that other people had that, or that energy was really even a thing. Like, to be honest, I think I spent a lot of my years not being aware of energy in that context, at least.
Yeah, same here. I thought it was just kind of something that was almost something that I was like creating in my own mind. Like, oh, Lauren, you're like building this up, you know, like it's not that big of a deal. And it generally was in the context of relationships, you know, especially with like, you know, men, or like relationships with like boyfriends or whatever, you know, and instead of, which relates to trusting your own gut with people as well. So yeah, I think that, one thing that I just really learned over the past few years on my own journey, because I've done a lot of growth over the past few years, is like, the more I know about how I operate, like the better I am. The more like content and fulfilled I feel, and I can have more authentic, real conversations, because I'm coming from a space that I'm really aware and like cool with myself. And
you're aligned. You're Pono.
yeah, Pona, man.
Yeah, right?
Yeah. I feel like I would like thrive in Hawaii. My husband's always like, Lauren, I know one day we're gonna move to Hawaii because like you just need to be on an island. But I'm really interested in learning more about Huna, because it's something that I think it really, like how you're talking about it is kind of how I process. So it's crazy, the more that, I don't know if you've noticed this, but like the more I've gone into my own like self, and I've like cleared out a lot of junk, I have been surprised at my capacity. Like my ability to like follow through, strive, and do hard stuff, but still have space to like, not, I don't get as burnt out as I used to, but I'm doing harder things.
It's like your neurology upgrades. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of the way the mind works. The unconscious level, the goal is to get things that you need to do to be unconscious, so you can give your conscious attention to higher level things, right? So it's like tying your shoes. It's automatic. It's unconscious. You don't have to think about it. You get conscious space to think about other things. And so as you progress and you integrate things and you get them to that unconscious level, they become permanent, so that then you can do that by just habit. You know, it's just normal. It's part of you. And then focus on the next level thing and always keep up leveling, you know? So yeah, your bandwidth and your capacity and everything will always, so long as you're aligned and you're focused on what you want, will always continue to grow, because you'll just be systematizing unconscious stuff as you go, you know?
Cool. And that's why we get so frustrated, because you're learning something new, you know,
boundaries.
You're running, and you're running into, you know, walls or junk that you got to work through. I mean, but bringing that way back down, like when you were a kid learning to tie your shoes, you used to get frustrated. But then
you kind of hit the boundary of what you could consciously do and process. Yeah.
And then now we just continue to do that as we get older. Wow, I've never thought of it like that. That's a whole space of forgiveness right there. It's like, oh man, you're just growing. Like,
you're just human.
You're just up leveling your consciousness each time you kind of hit something that's frustrating that you're working on. Just give yourself a break. you're growing. Oh, that's cool, Jocelyn.
Exactly. The good reframe.
Yeah. Oh,
That's where it's fun to put the more NLP conscious stuff plus the energy in together, is like you get to see how it translates into the physical world, you know, and that, like our bandwidth, like in energy work, is this kind of translates to our bandwidth and our conscious processing and our thinking and what we're able to do, you know? So it's fun. And there's infinite ways to think about it and to see it manifest, for sure.
Yeah. Aloha. Welcome to the Yogakane podcast. I'm Lauren, your host. If you're a returning listener, thank you so much for supporting and loving on the show. And if you're new to the Yogakane podcast, welcome. The Yogakane podcast is where you'll hear from individuals within the yoga and wellness community of the Pacific Northwest region. This podcast is just as much mine as it is yours. So if you know of someone who should be on the show, or if that someone is you, please connect with me. The more that we connect, the more we can uplift our awesome community. Now, before we get into this week's episode with Jocelyn Burke, who will talk to us about Huna, which is an ancient Hawaiian healing energy practice all about empowerment, I wanted to talk to you about the Yogakane podcast mini-series. Now, the mini-series is for anyone who specializes in an area of yoga or wellness. Or maybe you're like me and you're curious about yoga and wellness, and you know of a lot of great people who specialize in areas in your community and you want to sit down and talk with them. The mini-series is for you. This is for the person who has always wanted to start their own podcast but don't know where to start. My vision for the Yogakane podcast is to have it be a place where there are many voices, energies, identities, communities hosting their own show about various yoga or wellness related topics. It's a place for individuals like yourself to expand your own brand and to uplift your own community by utilizing the Yogakane platform. The Yogakane community is a collective where we come together to uplift ourselves and our awesome yoga and wellness community that is right outside our back door. If you are interested in the mini-series, please reach out to me. I will be there to support you every step of the way by sitting down with you to build out your series and your vision. I'll help you with editing, uploading, marketing, the works. I am very excited for the mini-series to take off, and I look forward to connecting with you. With that, let's get into this week's episode. This week's show is all about energy. If you didn't pick up on that already with the longer than usual intro, but I really wanted to give you a good solid taste of what is to come in this week's episode, because my guest for the show, Jocelyn Burke, talks to us about an ancient Hawaiian practice, Huna. I personally do not know much about the specifics of energy work, especially Huna. Before I met with Jocelyn, I didn't even know what Huna was. That is why I was so stoked when Jocelyn Burke decided to sit down with me. What I find remarkable about Jocelyn is that she is merging two worlds, the seen and the unseen, the feels and the science communities, together to empower holistic service professionals, youth, families, to reach their highest potential by tapping into the power of their soul and living in the vibration of their highest self. Now, if that doesn't give you the chills, I don't know what will. Jocelyn has a master's degree in education and is a certified yoga teacher. And she is also at level 4 in her Huna training. She has weaved all of this together to support individuals to clear out those roadblocks that are preventing them from living their best life. In this week's episode, Jocelyn talks to me about Huna, its history, what it is, and how it differentiates from other energy work like Reiki. She talks about how she has merged these worlds together to up-level her students. Thank you to Jocelyn and to her teachers and her teachers' teachers and her teachers' teachers' teachers for keeping the practice of Huna alive. One other thanks. Thank you so much to Soul Rising for providing the music for the podcast. Please enjoy. Jocelyn, welcome to the Yogakane podcast. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm glad that Renee connected us.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
So I've never heard of Huna yoga, and that's something that you specialize in. So what is it exactly?
Yeah, totally. So Huna is the ancient Hawaiian spiritual studies. And so there's Huna and then there's yoga. And then I teach them together, which I actually personally haven't come across anybody else that has done that yet. So it's something that I've been kind of playing with and putting together and has been really fun. But Huna on its own is basically, it's similar to yoga in that it's an ancient system, right? There's a lot of different aspects. It's not just one thing. It's a lot of different facets and there's a lot to it. So there are practices like meditation. There are energy work practices kind of like Reiki. And then there's also different concepts of working with the elements and doing soul journeys. And it's very, very multifaceted. The school of Huna that I have studied with is 28 generations deep, which is so amazing, unbroken, which is pretty unheard of, I'd say, for this day and age. And we've been given access to the teachings through some people that have been key players in letting Huna be what it is today, because there aren't a lot of people out there teaching Huna, and there aren't a lot of people that have had access to these teachings. And so the Huna that I'm learning is a lot about how to bring this ancient wisdom into modern day practice and how to use it with people to create empowerment. And so that's really what my focus is taking these practices and meditations and techniques, energy work, things like that, and then blending that into different offerings to help people to reach that ideal state of spiritual empowerment. And so I do that in a lot of different ways. One way is through yoga. So I actually do energy work, and I'll do some of the meditative techniques in my yoga classes, which I believe is just really powerful. And then I also do private work with clients too, one-on-one, in the forms of coaching. And then I have empowerment sessions and breakthrough sessions that I do that integrate both the Huna aspects as well as other things that I've been trained in as far as behavior work and neuro-linguistic programming and all this fun stuff that my background was before I came into all the spiritual stuff. So I put that together to be able to help people in one-on-one settings as well.
Dang. So Huna then so it sounds like it's more meditative.
It's so many things. It's hard to even put into words what it is. You could think of it as like a set of teachings, you know, you could like, there's a list we have that has like 18 aspects of Huna that kind of dives deep into different like release work techniques for managing your emotions, forgiveness techniques like Ho'oponopono, which some people might be familiar with from other schools of ancient Hawaiian wisdom as well. So there's like one way to look at it is that it's a set of teachings. Another way to look at it is that it's like a way of life, you know, it's that you're really putting that into practice and using that to create that lifestyle of empowerment.
So what does it look like one of your empowerment sessions?
Yeah, so the empowerment sessions are really fun. That's a session that I created where the first half is very focused on things about like getting really clear in an area of life. So I work with a lot of service professionals. That's like my favorite people to work with, people that are helping others. And a lot of times what we'll do is pick an area like career, like maybe they, you know, a lot of times as brand new yoga teachers just getting started, they're like, I don't really know what to do. I'm feeling blocked. I'm not sure. I'm stuck, you know, anxious, all those feelings. The empowerment session, the first half of it is really designed to get to the root of all the challenges. So I use different techniques from neuro-linguistic programming as well as energy work. So kind of blending the behavioral and integrative methods to be able to get to the roots of challenges, really identifying where that might be in the mind and the body, if there's trauma, if there are blocks, things like that. And then the second half is where I bring in all the Huna techniques to help to clear it out. And so it's fun because a lot of times I think we do energy sessions with things like Reiki and it's not as specific or targeted. Whereas in the empowerment session, you actually can drill down and get to the root of the challenge that you're facing and overcome it and have an undeniable experience of it within one session. So that second half is like that clear release where you're actually having that experience of using these different techniques from energy work and the meditative processes to release the baggage, to clear out the space in your mind and in your body for your soul to be able to fill it in with light and really get clear on the goals that you want to reach as a result. So it's very specific, it's very focused, and it's definitely designed to help you create empowerment within that area. So as I mentioned, it could be career. I also work with people on relationships, family life, really any area of life you can apply it to, because it's just a formula that we can recreate of really just getting to the roots, digging up the baggage, releasing it, and then bringing in what you need to be able to move forward on the path, really aligned with your higher self and really aligned with what it is that you know you're here to do.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, they're really fun. And the empowerment sessions are anywhere from like 2 to 4 hours. And then I also have a breakthrough session that I do that's like double that experience, where we get to dive even deeper. And that takes about 6 or 7 hours, but kind of a similar formula.
So these are one-on-ones, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so so after those sessions, then do you give people material to take away?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll give people different things. So depending on what the needs are. So some people are coming to me really because they just need to release. They're like, hey, I got some stuff going on and it's totally in the unconscious parts of my mind and I can't get rid of it. Whereas other people are like, hey, I know what's going on, but I don't know what to do about it. And I need some tools or some goals for long term. So sometimes it looks like us working together to just clear out the space and get them realigned and set on the path. And then you're good. Other times it looks like, well, let's get clear, figure out what your goal is and get really detailed and specific about that. Let's create a list of action steps. Let's create timelines. We can get a little bit more conscious minded about that. And then other times it's me actually teaching them how to do the tools on their own. So a lot of times people will work with me for like a month or two afterwards, and we'll do weekly coaching so that they can learn how to use the practices that can be helpful on a day-to-day basis, like emotional release work and like the forgiveness practices of Ho'oponopono, to be able to create consistent results. So that's a lot of what I'll focus on with people too. And I send recordings of things so they can learn how to do the processes in their own minds. Because to me, that's kind of the goal, right? Is to be able to learn the practices that are really going to help you get to where you need to go, and then memorize them or automate them internally so that you can have them anywhere. That's a lot of what I focus on in my practice with people, is getting to that point where you can self-regulate. You can use these tools and be your own energy worker. So you don't need someone like me for the rest of your life, but rather you can go to them if you need help, if you've got a blind spot, but really the goal is to like upgrade your nervous system and your neurology to be able to handle and process that on your own so that you can continuously be empowered. And I say, keep leveling up.
Totally. Oh, I'm all about that. I mean, I think there's something very freeing about being in that space where you are in a situation where you are being challenged and you can visually see, like, that's the direction I used to go. That's how I used to respond. But I've been learning, and I love how you said to make it more automated, shift the response so that it isn't that old path, but it's like your new path.
Exactly.
You are like carving out. With those techniques, so are the techniques then from Huna, the Huna practice?
Yep. So that's what I love to teach. I can teach things a lot of different ways because my background as a behavioral therapist before I got into the integrative methods. So I can teach a lot about, how to fine tune your behaviors and get your intention, your behaviors to align to reach your goals. But my favorite way, and I believe actually is the easiest way, is through Huna techniques. I think when you get to the level of working with energy, like change happens in an instant, and so the practices that I teach most regularly from Huna, one of them is called Ho'oku'u, which means to make release. And it's basically teaching your mind how to let go of baggage, which is amazing because we all have baggage. We're human, right? There's emotions, there's anger, sadness, fear, and guilt. We have limiting beliefs. We have limiting decisions, old behavioral patterns. That's all just baggage in our neurology. And through Huna, you can learn how to let that go permanently and like really actually let it go and create the space that you need to live more in alignment with your higher self. And so that's one technique that I'll teach every client that I work with. I teach that, and because that to me has been definitely what saved me in my path. And then the Ho'oponopono technique is another one that I teach everybody because that really, again, just helps to keep you in a clear space. I think forgiveness is a very powerful practice in helping you to be able to let go of what energy is not yours so that you can stay aligned and congruent within yourself. And so that's what I think a lot of the Huna teachings are designed to help us to become what the Hawaiians call pono, which means to be congruent and to be right with you and who you are. And it's the idea of being your higher self. You just are who you are, and you can truly and authentically express and live in alignment with your path, and, you know who you are and know where you're going and be totally congruent with that. So a lot of the practices that I teach are all designed to help people to be pono and to be able to live in that state or the vibration of higher self.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And that links really well into yoga, because in the Yoga Sutras, one of the first few chapters or first few sutras talks about how attachment is the root of all suffering. And
Yes.
both of those things that you talked about, forgiveness and what was the first one?
The release work.
Release work. It reminds me a lot of that sutra about letting go of that attachment that we have to perceptions of other people, and also to like those material possessions that we hold on to that really clog up our vision. And that's something that I've personally been really practicing is that attachment element in my own life, and looking at these attachments that I have. And I found once I've started to consciously explore that landscape, it's freeing once you kind of start letting stuff go and know that what is meant for me will be for me, and what's not is not. And all I can do is just what I can. And that's kind of been my relationship with attachment instead of grouping. And it kind of creates like a nice flow in my own mind, which is important to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you. And that's actually a practice I've been really deep within myself in the past 2 or 3 years, and working with a lot of people on as well. Because I mean, I don't remember who said it, but there's the idea that harmony lies where obstruction does not exist. And so if you can remove the blocks, the obstructions within your mind, your body, your neurology, you can then have access to harmony. It just is, and attachments are just obstructions. And I have a big passion for working in the mind and body in that connected space. I was a yoga teacher before I even found Huna, so I was automatically like taken to it, and part of the reason I studied yoga and became a yoga teacher was because I myself had a lot of chronic pain that I later learned was totally emotional. I had no idea, but I know there's a lot coming out right now about like trauma and how it's held in the body. And so I found yoga as the first practice that really actually brought me relief. And then when I found Huna, it helped me to go deeper into the unconscious mind in that more targeted and specific way that really created even more long-lasting change. So that's why I love putting them together, because I think that Huna can help with, more of like getting conscious about the change that you're creating. And then yoga is like the amazing practice that you can use for physical integration, because it's one thing to have an idea and to bring it down into the mind, but it's another to take it from the mind and integrate it to the body, so I love like putting those practices together as a way to be able to come at it from both angles, both the spiritual down to the physical, and then the physical building up to the spiritual. So I think, they're kind of a fun complement in that way. And definitely both Huna and yoga are my daily practices as far as what I do to keep me aligned and grounded and connected to source, so that I can keep showing up and doing what I'm here to do in the world.
Oh, I love how you just went through that, because I as well connect with what you're saying about grounding those ideas or grounding those habits that we want to shift or whatever it is. And it's great to have them and to see them, but then you got to ground them. And
absolutely,
I find as well that the asana practice helps me a lot with that. But then I have to do other things outside of yoga to kind of funnel through mentally the blockages and the different traumas that I've had in my life and whatnot, to heal and to, grow from it, instead of just like letting it still be there. So with Huna, then it's fascinating, because it doesn't seem like, so it's a lot of mental work, it sounds like.
Yes and no. I think part of the reason, at least the way that I've learned Huna, has been through my teachers that also teach Neuro-Linguistic Programming. So Dr. Matt James is one of my teachers, and he's also a kumu, is what we call a teacher in Huna. And I think it's just kind of like, random universe kind of circumstance that it just so happened that the people that have had access to these ancient teachings also teach the language of the mind, which is NLP, or Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And so the way that I've learned it has been very tangible and very contextual, you know, so it's very much about, okay, here's the challenge that you're facing and here's might be where it is in the mind, and here's how do you use Huna to help it. So to me, I think about how can I use Huna in a very conscious way. Like that's just, I think, because of the way that I've been taught and who my teachers are, which I'm incredibly grateful for. Huna itself is energy work, you know, which is very much above the plane of conscious thought. And so I think it really just depends on how you use it. Like you might meet Huna practitioners that just do energy work. You might meet Huna practitioners that do one-on-one guided work. And then you might meet Huna practitioners like myself. There are quite a few of us that are trained in deeper levels of change work and Huna that then put them together to create a specific type of result. So there are a handful of us I know that are trained as professionals in certain areas that then use Huna to get deeper and permanent results. If that makes sense.
Yeah, could you give me an example of what of what it looks like? Like
Like Huna looks like?
Yeah, what Huna looks like. Like so someone comes in with, you know, they want to stop smoking. I don't know. Like you know, they want to I don't know if that's a common thing. Maybe you give me an example and just kind of give me like a high level look of what, which I know is probably really hard to do because it's energetic work, but I'm just curious on what it looks like.
Yeah. That's what it's different for everybody. And so I want everybody to know that the way I do Huna is not the way that Huna is done, in the sense that like, there's not a one way to do it. There are many ways, there are many practices. I initiate people into Huna energy work too. So there are certain people that only have certain levels of access to the teachings. I'm a level 4 student, as they call it, where I've gone through all the trainings, and I'm now just a continued student where I'll be going back for the rest of my life and keep learning. So the way that I might use it might be a little bit more integrated and a little bit more aligned with my background and my path because of the way that I was trained, you know? So, but what I would do, one way is an empowerment session, right? So as I mentioned, there's like, you know, using more tools from NLP and behavior change, plus using the Huna work to be able to create a result. But I can give you kind of an example of what it might look like in a one-on-one session setting. And then I can also give you an example of what it would look like if I was teaching yoga and using it at the same time, because I think that's kind of a contrast. So say if I was doing a one-on-one session with somebody, I work pretty similarly in everything that I do. I like to use like more concrete frameworks to be able to help people get results. And so like an empowerment session is really just a longer in-depth version of like a coaching session that I might do. But the coaching sessions that I do are all energy based. And so when somebody comes to me, they might come to me and say, okay, you know, here's my challenge. I am having a problem with my significant other, and it's really getting in the way of my business, and now my clients aren't happy. And a lot of times I handle those kinds of like deep intertwined things that are taking over all areas of life. Like that's what I think Huna is really fun at working with. So I would be able to first get the client really clear on like, okay, well, what is it that you want? You know, like, where are you now? Where do you want to be? What's the difference? We might talk for a few minutes just to kind of understand like what's going on internally. I like to listen to language patterns. That's something I'm trained in, to better understand where the mind is creating the problem in the first place, like where the root might be. And then once I've helped to get to the root of what's going on, that's when then I shift gears into more the energy mode, right? So that's where we might do a release work session. So maybe there's an emotion that we found is actually anger has been coming up in all these situations, and my emotion is running the bus when I'm in these different situations, and I need to release that anger in order to be able to get to the goal of having the harmony with my partner and then having happy clients. Then we might just spend the whole session releasing anger, you know, which doesn't take that long. So it might be just a couple minutes of release work and then going into some goal setting or going into some energy work practices to kind of balance out the nervous system. Whereas somebody else might say, you know, the root of the problem was actually, I'm pissed at my partner because he didn't help me with the thing that I thought I needed help with. And actually it triggered something from when I was 5 years old. And that's why everything is going crazy right now. And then maybe we need to get to the root of that thing and go forgive whoever triggered that thing at 5 years old, to then free up the energy in the nervous system to then let it direct towards the goal that they really want. So those are some examples. Other times it's, fun to play with energy. So sometimes I'll do just straight up energy sessions with people where I might have them, if I'm doing distance session, just have them like sit and close their eyes or even lay down. Or if I'm doing in-person sessions, have them on a table and do just energy work to help process and clear if it's more of like a chakra imbalance kind of problem. And then other times, fun one that I like to do a lot is called the Keawe process, which is a process to help resolve dichotomy challenges. So say sometimes we get stuck in these two models of the world where it's either this or this, when really it's not either of those things, it's something higher, but we're blocked because we're stuck in this level of thinking. You know, it might be, well, there's me and then there's my partner, or there's me and my business, but we're not, you know, flowing, we're not in harmony right now. Well, maybe we need to be able to get above that and recreate some new energy and bring a new dichotomy into existence to support you in better flowing and being in harmony with whatever it is that you're trying to create. So that's a fun soul journey that I do a lot of work with people on, to be able to recreate anything. Really, it's playing with the process of creation in the mind. So those are some examples.
So you're almost rewiring the way that our brains have been raised to view situations, view relationships, or those struggles that we kind of come up to, and that's usually how we will deal with it. But you're up leveling people so that they can deal with it in a way that serves them and keeps them moving higher up in their consciousness, so they can be in Puna.
Well, so they can just be Pono, to be empowered and to be aligned. Absolutely. Yeah. So exactly. So I hope that kind of shows that there are a lot of different techniques and Huna methods for creating change, right? You can release things, you can forgive people, you can harmonize dichotomies, you can do energy work, you can do breath work is even part of Huna. So there's all these different methods, and based on the level of the practitioner, they might be able to support you in different ways. So like, for example, I have trained a handful of people up here in Idaho that are trained in just energy work. And so they might not be able to do quite the session that I would do with somebody, but they might be able to support energetically as if somebody was like doing a Reiki session using the Huna energy, which some people feel is different than Reiki. So yeah, you might have different levels of that. But I'll share too what it looks like in a yoga class so that you can better understand that. Because it's one thing in a one-on-one session, that's where we get to get creative with, okay, well, what do you want? Where are you now? And then what are all the fun things we could put together to be able to support you in getting there? And then in a group setting, I bring in different types of techniques depending on what I feel is necessary, whether it's for the group or because of the energy of the full moon or the new moon. I do a lot of events around that just because I think it's fun. And the way that I've designed the yoga classes are where we start out with something Huna related. So we might do a meditation, we might do a little soul journey, we might do a little energy balancing. So, a lot of times you take a yoga class and you have an intention in the beginning. I'll kind of use that space as something Huna related. So depending on what we're doing, it's a yoga class or a full moon circle or something like that, I'll choose something like that. But a lot of times it's a meditation and some energy work. And then once you have brought in that energy, so I call it yoga and Mauna Loa, because in Hawaiian, Mauna Loa is the highest level of energy. It is the energy of higher self. And so what we're doing really is we're connecting with that higher self energy, bringing it in with some sort of intention, and then going into yoga practice. So it's really helping to align ourselves with that vibration of higher self, and kind of the building blocks of energy. I'll share really quickly, and then I'll keep going. From the Hawaiian perspective, is there's Mauna Loa is like the highest level of vibration of energy. That is the energy of higher self, of one, of source. It is just the highest level. And then below that you have Mana Mana, and then below that you have Mana. And some people are familiar with the word Mana, which just means energy. So Mana on its own at the basic level is just basic energy. It's the energy that runs the body, that keeps us alive. It's kind of like the energy of the unconscious mind. Mana Mana is the thing in between, and that's like the next level up of Mana, where it might be like the energy of the conscious mind of thought. And then Mauna Loa again is the highest level of energy. So those are kind of like the building blocks. So Mauna Loa is what we're trained in as energy work. So it's like, for me as an energy worker, if I was just doing energy work in Huna, I would call that Mauna Loa. And so people, like I mentioned, that might be up here that are trained in that, they can practice those types of energy work is using Mauna Loa as the energy. So the yoga in Mauna Loa is connecting with that energy of higher self, using that energy, flowing. And then, so what I'll do is I've trained in a lot of different types of yoga. So sometimes I teach yin, sometimes hatha, sometimes vinyasa, and I'll customize a class again, kind of based on what it is that we're working on. And then I'll use Huna at the same time. So that might look like, a lot of times when people are teaching yoga, they walk around and do hands-on assessments and adjustments and assists. I use Huna while I do those, and I get really awesome feedback from that. I actually had students that were training with me and taking classes with me as I was going through my yoga training, or Huna training rather, and they reported that my adjustments changed. They were like, your adjustments have gotten so much better since, I don't know, where have you been going in Hawaii? And it was funny because I've been using energy. So basically the idea is that when you're trained in energy work, you have this connection to the system of energy that you can then call in and bring into whatever environment that you're in. And so you can, again, use it in one-on-one client sessions. I love to use it during groups where I can work energy both with the group as a whole and with the individuals within the group, both energetically and with hands-on adjustments and assists. So through the whole class, I walk around, I'm talking, cueing, guiding, a lot of times dropping in little things from Huna that might help the body process. Very much, again, about the mind-body work and really helping that come into alignment by using the higher self. So that's kind of what we'll do during the class. And at the very end of the class, when everybody's in Shavasana, again, I'll usually take them through some sort of guided meditation or a Huna process to help integrate. And then I'll walk around and do hands-on energy work with everybody that's there. And so depending on how many people, it might be, just a second or two per person, just a little bit. And then if it's a smaller class group setting, then I might do a little bit of a longer Shavasana and have everybody have a couple minutes. But I'll walk around and just kind of intuitively use the energy that I feel is necessary, just kind of tuning into Huna and understanding where their body is and what their energy is asking for, and letting myself be that conduit to then call that in and to transmute that. So the yoga classes, that's kind of like the general template, is like starting out using some Huna meditation process, going through yoga, asana, bringing in pranayama, a lot of different aspects of the yogic practice, and then ending with Shavasana and Huna put together and utilizing energy work and things like that. So that's kind of a big overview of the yoga and Mauna Loa class that I teach.
I don't know much about energy work, like the details about it. So it's just fascinating for me to hear about it from your perspective and how you use it with Huna, because, I just only know what I feel, but I don't know, you being a teacher of it and a light worker, I don't know how that is from your end, like what you're experiencing. So when you're in that space, like what are you picking up on? Like what kind of sensations are you feeling?
That's a good question. And this is fun because I think it's different for everyone. Like everybody experiences energy differently. And I also think that the more you're familiar with energy, the different you experience it as well. Like for me now, as opposed to a couple of years ago, I have a totally different experience of energy. But I can share where I'm at with my path and kind of what my energy experience is like now. And then I can also share a little bit about from my students and what they've shared with me about what that's like for them too.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Jocelyn.
Yeah. Oh, I love
really
to.
Cool, because I'm just curious, like, how do you know when you're receiving energy?
Yeah,
Right?
it's fun. So at Huna, so when I say at Huna, I mean like the big trainings that we do. So every 6 months, we're on the Big Island for anywhere from 9 days to like 15 days, depending on what level you are. We're in there and we're studying. We call it the big boy Huna training. It's like there's level 1, 2, 3, 4. In those levels is where you really learn how to do that, how to attune your neurology and turn on your nervous system to be able to send and receive energy in the kind of the ancient ways, right? And also in the smaller workshops that I sometimes do here on the mainland is just teaching how to do basic energy work. That's a lot of times where you might get access to really understanding what your baseline is. So like for me, a couple years ago, when I first started doing energy work, to be honest, I didn't really feel a whole ton. Like I've always been pretty empathic, and I've always been able to kind of sense like, heavy energy versus light energy kind of thing, but not much other than that. Like it was pretty, and then now I don't know, 4 years later of doing this work, I definitely am noticing that I am learning to see, hear, and feel energy in new ways every single day. And the way that I experience energy is different every day. And at first I thought like, okay, I'm going to develop my ability to feel energy and then see energy. And then, and I tried to be linear about it and tried to be like conscious minded, and then realized a couple years ago, like that doesn't really work. It doesn't work that way. Energy works in a very nonlinear way, and your senses open up as they are ready to, and as you are called to, and maybe even depending on like what your primary modality is. So for me, I've always been a very visual and kinesthetic person. So I've noticed that over the years, I've kind of fluctuated in being more visual and more kinesthetic. And then it's like, the best way I can explain it is like each time I'd go to Huna every 6 months, it's like I'd get this big level up. You know, you go spend all this time doing energy work and practicing, and then it's like, whoa, and all of a sudden you're experiencing things in new ways. And so for me, as of recently, I was just in Hawaii in March for a good little over 2 weeks studying. And since I've been back and practicing with clients, I noticed that my body is talking to me more than ever before, which is the coolest thing. I never expected that to necessarily be my modality. But what I notice is that when I'm working with somebody, when I'm in their space and I have their permission and they want the change work, it's almost like our higher selves are communicating, and I get this either a feeling or knowing or a picture of what it is that I need to do to help them. So sometimes it's like, you know, I'm doing hands-on energy work with somebody, and all of a sudden it's like, I just know the energy that I need to send. You know, it's like, so in Huna, we have about 36 different symbols of energy that we use. So kind of similar to Reiki. And sometimes the symbol literally would just pop up in my mind and I just know, oh, that's the symbol that they need. Other times I'll be working with somebody and it's like the chakra that they have a blockage in lights up in me. And then I know, oh, ask them a question about their relationships or about their mom, because it's on the right side on this, or, you know, like I can kind of pick out based on my awareness of like chakras and different energies and things like that, plus the feelings that I get that my body might be mirroring something that they're going through, so that I can get deeper insight to then understand what it is that they need. So those are some examples of like what I experience. Other times I feel like a heat or a coolness, a pressure. Sometimes it's like I was working on somebody about a week ago and I was like near his head, and all of a sudden it literally felt like something was coming out of his ear and like into my hand. And there was nothing. There's like this much space between it. So it was like there was some energy coming from his field towards mine that was then, you know, impacting the way that I was feeling. And it kind of gave me some feedback of, oh, pay attention to that area and see what it needs, you know. But it's very on a day-to-day basis, how I feel it. I noticed that over the past year or two, really my body has definitely been, as I do my own work to clear out through yoga and through Huna, that it's almost like I'm a canvas in a way for energy to be able to tell me what to do. And like I said, sometimes it's just a knowing or it's a picture. Other times it's that feeling in my body. But it's been really fun to just see and feel it as it opens up, and noticing too, like as you surrender to it and as you allow it to happen, your own neurology will tell you where you need to focus, you know, and what your specialty is, quote unquote, so that you can then focus on that and give it some space to unfold and to grow. So that's what I think is kind of fun. A lot of people talk about, you know, like clairsentience and clairvoyance and all that. I think it's all very closely related, and just how you allow yourself to be open to experiencing energy.
I'm glad you answered my question I was going to have, because I'm curious, you know, how do you receive energy and not put your own perspective on it? You know, how do you receive something and be, like you said, a blank canvas to receive it and not put your own bias on it or your own trauma?
I'm glad you asked that. That's a really great question. And the thing that pops into my mind right now is through non-attachment, really. You know, it's through allowing yourself to just simply be, which I believe is absolutely a practice. And it's not something that's a one and done, you know, it's always ongoing. And I'm sure you can appreciate that. But to me, it's like, so every morning I do a meditation where I just lay in stillness and I just check in with myself. I check in with my physical body, my mental, emotional bodies, spiritual, and I go through each of my chakras and I just kind of assess energetically, like, how am I feeling? You know, am I open? Am I closed? Like, what's going on? And I take time to go through each chakra one by one and just clear it out. A lot of times with energy work or just simple breath work, just to clear. And by the end of it, I always reach this, not always, but most of the time, I reach this space of almost just like, it feels like my soul is floating in my body. That's the best way I can explain it. And that's when I know, oh, I'm in that space. And then I can let go and I can just be, and I set a timer and I let it go off after 20 minutes or however long. And then I know that whatever I experienced was just energy moving through me in the way that is in the highest and best, because I was just clear and in the light, you know? So I think to me, it's like a practice of being able to get to that space where you can just truly let go. You know, in yoga, samadhi, and other cultures and different practices, it's a lot of, you know, there are different names for it. But I think in being in that space of just being in bliss, you know, being in openness, where you're not attached to anything or anyone, any outcomes. You're just open to receiving. You're in your light, you're aligned, you're clear, you're congruent. The more you can do that, the more you can practice that, the better it is, and easier it is rather, to be able to sense energy and to sense differences. And so that's a lot of my practice now for me personally, is just keeping my conduit clear, you know, keeping my mind and my body as clear and free as possible without attachment, so that I can just be in that vibration of my higher self and be in the light, so that I can sense what's coming. And it's cool. Like, I've seen in the past few years, a lot has opened up for me personally, as both in my practice, like in how I work with people. It's very much more intuitive. It's not as scripted, you know, as it has been in the past, but then also in the way that I experience my life. You know, I get a lot of gut feelings and intuitions and little like psychic things that happen now, because I'm just clear and things can come in, you know, I'm not so blocked up. It's like, I can just have the thought and then actualize it, you know, it happens a lot faster. So I don't know if that answers your question, but some thoughts that are just kind of related to that topic.
Oh, it really does. And I think that just kind of helps to keep that in mind, that as we're beginning to teach yoga, or as you're beginning your day even, you know, to take that time and to remember to take that time to be intentional about, you know, scanning the body, mind, and spirit, seeing what you're bringing to the day, and moving from that space instead of, you know, fighting it or overriding it. Because when we're in that overriding space, the ego really is there, and we don't necessarily move with intention, which kind of throws off, I think, our flow of our path, I think, a little bit. When we move from a space that's forced, it kind of has a ripple effect, or what you do next isn't necessarily like that natural flow. But you know, everything happens for a reason as well.
Totally.
That is the case, and also you do learn a lot. So what happens when you just can't like clear it out? You're like, this is just a shitty day.
That's a good question. You know, to me, I think it's all, I go back to my behavior training and my training in neuro-linguistic programming. And I always ask myself, how am I creating this? Because I'm the only one that can create my reality. And like the best way I can kind of bridge the gap between that and Huna is, one of our teachers explained to us the idea that in any moment, what you're experiencing is the light of your higher self shining through the lens of your unconscious mind onto the world. And the unconscious mind is where our baggage is. It's where our beliefs are. It's where everything, you know, good, bad, positive, negative, whatever you want to call it, is. If you are clear and aligned, then the light that comes through and shines on your path is going to create the best possible reality. And you'll know that, and you'll feel it, and you'll be congruent with it. And even if it's not perfect, you know that it is on some level, because you're experiencing it, and it's great, you know? And then at the times where you're not experiencing the reality that you want, it's because there's just something off. It's either usually a baggage, like something that's stuck. So a belief, a feeling, some sort of mental, emotional something, or it's a misalignment. It's something that is not aligned with you and your values, or you and your path. And so to me, what I always think back to is, well, if I'm in this moment and my higher self is somehow helping me to create this moment, then I can uncreate it and recreate it any way that I want. But I have to remember that I'm creating it, and I have to do the work to look within and see, how am I creating this right now? You know? So for example, this morning I woke up and I was in a little bit of a lower space, and I was just kind of asking myself, okay, like, is it my mind? Is it my body? Is there stuff? And I could feel that there was stuff I needed to process. And I went for a walk, and I did some breath work, and I did some energy work, and I could feel it moving and changing. And as I went into it, I could start to kind of notice like what it was. Like sometimes when I can take time to be in the energy, I can feel, you know, oh, it's this experience that I didn't process yet that's now coming to the surface. Or, oh, it's some feelings that I don't really know what they are. They're not specific, but they just need to come out, you know, and maybe I need to cry for a second or whatever it is, you know. So to me, I don't think that there's necessarily anything as like a good or a bad day. There is just a moment that you're clear and aligned, and there's a moment that you're not, you know, and every moment is an opportunity to just ask yourself, like, how am I creating this? You know, is it my mind? Is it my body? Sometimes it's just because you're tired that you're creating this funny reality that you're experiencing that doesn't feel quite right. You know, there's all kinds of things that you can check in with at different levels of the mind and the body to better able to understand how it's being created. But every moment is that point of power where you can check in and just realign and figure out what's one thing that you can do to move forward, you know.
Every moment is that point of power. Oh yeah. I know. Oh, I love that. Okay, so Huna, so where does it come from? So you said this particular school that you went to is 28 generations.
Mhm.
So where does the practice, little origin story for us?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the 28 generation origin story is that, so the practices that I'm trained in come from the Bray lineage. And so you can look up, if you type in like on Google or whatever, Daddy Bray or Papa Bray, those are the ones that are most commonly known for being the last practicing kahunas in these studies and on the Big Island. They're the ones that have carried it through their family. So that's the kind of the lineage. And so in the late 1800s, there was a time where people came to the islands and started to take over, and it was basically like all the ancient teachings had to go into hiding. It wasn't safe. The people that were coming in and trying to take over were, you know, not native, obviously, and they didn't want people practicing the native practices. And so the king at the time of Hawaii had to help everybody to basically like store and hide some of the ancient teachings so that they could be passed on. And then a lot of them unfortunately were lost because it just wasn't able to be, you know, wasn't able to survive. People would get punished if they were doing things like chanting, which I didn't mention is a very big part of Huna. Chanting in public or doing practices were seen as bad or evil, and people would be punished for that. They would be put into jail and all kinds of stuff. And so it was kind of this crazy time, the late 1800s, where the teachings kind of had to go into hiding mode, is what I think of it as. And so there were a few different people that were key players in keeping the practices alive. Papa Bray and Daddy Bray were two of those people. And then there were a few others that were people that went around the islands and helped to document the different energy practices and things like that too. And so after it was safe to start practicing again, that's when Papa Bray, alongside a couple other people, came together and started to see, well, how can we keep these teachings alive? And unfortunately, it was even at the point where a lot of the kids of their own kids didn't even want the practices because they were seen as like dirty, evil, and nasty, and they didn't want to get in trouble. And so they had to find people that were actually open to wanting to carry on the teachings, even though it was kind of dangerous. And so a couple people that had played a big part of that, one of them is Uncle George Naope, who you can also Google. He's very well known. He's the founder of the Merry Monarch Hula Festival. And
Yeah.
you might have heard of him. He passed away, I think, about 10 years ago. He was the one that helped us to establish the workshops that we're running now. So it was with his permission and with Papa Bray, as well as John Kahimikawa and a few other people, that they came together and decided to pass on the teachings. The funny part of the story was that Uncle George knew that there was somebody that he needed to give these teachings to that was outside of his blood family. And that's where my teacher, Dr. Matt James, his dad was the one that got access to the teachings. He had seen him in a dream and was like, I just know this is the guy that I need to connect with so-and-so to then pass on the teachings. And it was just one of those things, and they connected. And I think it's been 20 years now of Huna, maybe longer, of these workshops that have been running in this format of every 6 months on the Big Island that have been come to fruition. So it's kind of the elders with their practices and their teachings, coupled with the James lineage of Dr. Matt James and his dad, Tad James, that came together to be able to reconceptualize the way that they had been teaching Huna to make it a little bit more, I don't know what the word is, modern, in the sense that, like, you know, it's a workshop style and you're in class and you're learning these things, as opposed to like sitting around the fire or the dinner table passing down these little seeds of information one thing at a time. But yeah, it was kind of taking it through that time where it wasn't allowed and had to go into secret, which is why it's called Huna in the first place. Huna means secret. So like concealed wisdom. That's where all these practices kind of got stored. And also why you might hear different people call Huna different things is because Huna is a word that is, can be used in different ways. We just call our workshops Huna because it's all Huna, you know, it's all concealed wisdom that was once hidden that is now available, based on the fact that the elders felt like it was time and that it was necessary. I think they just knew and felt that vision that if we want to continue to spread empowerment and bring harmony in the world, we need to be able to help these teachings live. And so now there are a couple hundred of us that go to the Big Island every few months, and we study and we get permission to teach different things at different times. And then now we're going out and teaching people and initiating them and being able to pass down the teachings as well.
Wow. So you're kind of a part of a new generation then of passing the Huna lineage on to people not like on the mainland.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So this is new. It is really new. I
Mhm.
think it was the early 1990s that they started to do these workshops on the Big Island where people could come and study and take lessons and then take them in different places. And I think now we're at this time where we're seeing like quite a few of the teachers at Huna are now teaching across the world. Like we have some teachers in Japan, we have some teachers here on the mainland, we have some in Australia. So now people are to the level where they can teach the bigger workshops in different places and actually have people be initiated or do a full level 1. But at the moment, the only place that you can go to do like level 2s and 3s and 4s is on the Big Island with our school, with our halau is what we call it. So yeah, it's new, and in the sense that this is the first time that we're seeing it done this way for this long of time.
Mhm.
And I'm definitely one of the youngest ones that is currently studying at this level, which is exciting because yeah, I think my generation and the people that are studying alongside me, we are going to be the next one, to be able to pass it on. So
Yeah,
it's pretty exciting.
and just imagine you starting so young and you're at that level where like you said, over the last few years, you've been starting to feel it more in your body, and just imagine where you're going to be in a few years from now, and how that's going to, and how that muscle and that awareness is just going to continue to grow
Mm-hmm.
and deepen. And that is some powerful,
Yeah.
beautiful stuff right there. My heart though goes out to those people and having to suppress who they were, because
Right.
I mean that right there is just kind of like what happened with like the Native Americans here,
Yep.
and it's just like suppressing and hiding those people's way of living and their history and their wisdom. And it sounds like that's very similar to, I don't know much
Yep.
about Hawaiian culture, but just from what I do know is a very similar, almost genocide
Mm-hmm.
in a way of of their culture.
Yep.
Dang.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, because a lot of us feel this like deep rooted need to share these teachings.
do
And
you.
it's like, some people believe in past lives and things like that. It's something that we do practice at Huna, is going into past lives and understanding, who you are and where you came from a soul perspective. And I know for me, as well as a lot of people that I study with, it's like there's some part of us that can't not, it's like we have to. And it also feels like we've done it before, like there's some element of this that's like, it's just, why is it so easy for me? Why is it feels so natural? When I learn something, I put it into practice and it just works. Like it just is, And so to me, it's like I dream about it all the time. Just about teaching and sharing these teachings. One, because of the fact that I think they were repressed and they were necessary and they obviously do good work. But two, because they helped me to become who I am and where I am on my path. I had a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff that I had to work through. And Huna is absolutely one of the cornerstones of my practices that helped me to get to the empowered space that I'm in now. So I have this very deep knowing and feeling in my gut, and my higher self reminds me every day that I'm here to do this stuff, and I need to teach it and talk about it, even though people don't always get it. And even though it's kind of woo-woo and out there, it's time, and
It is time.
the time is now.
I mean, our convictions come from our ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like unfinished business that we are here to complete and follow through on that, whatever it is that they weren't able to. And that I totally am with you, Jocelyn. Like we collectively as a society, we are definitely on a path of up leveling, where we're stepping into this new way of, you hear it a lot, like you hear people saying, what's the rush back to normal? With COVID-19, it almost shocked our society to actually up level collectively and to go into our new normal, which is more forward thinking, which is more inclusive, which incorporates these higher levels of healing that go just beyond, Western medicine. And it's starting to call in this wisdom that is in our bodies, in our nature, above and beyond and below. So we're definitely stepping into that space where collectively people, because I think on some level we all feel it, or we've all felt it once in our life. Even if you're a kid and you've been so disconnected from it, we have always been connected to something beyond. And it just kind of takes that time for people to get reconnected to it. I like to think of it as like a pathway that we've just let overgrow. You just kind of gotta hedge it out.
Exactly. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think kids are actually part of the answer. You know, I actually, my career up until now has been mostly with children and focused on kids. And I love working with them and doing Huna because they just get it, you know.
Yeah.
I was a
I'm
behavioral
sure.
therapist, as I mentioned, and then I started to teach integratively and starting to work with a lot of people that worked with people. And a lot of what I focus on is people who work with kids, but I still do work with a handful of students myself just to kind of keep myself connected at the end because I love it so much. And I just had a group last night with some teens, and I'm teaching them this stuff as a way to self-regulate, you know, and as a way to be able to keep themselves clear and aligned so that as they're growing, they don't have to go into those spaces. They don't have to let their path be overgrown.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have to let those old patterns or patterns even become old patterns, you know? So yeah. I think it's exciting to think about.
I have absolutely loved this conversation, and I know we dove into the energy practices. Do you want to go into that a little bit more, or I feel like
we talked a good amount about it actually.
That really well, and I think it gave a really good perspective, so that it's giving the listeners just enough to like get into it, to like sink their teeth into if they want, instead of because I could see it being something that you really need to get into.
You kind of have to experience it, I think. Yeah.
I know.
I think something I will share is, so I mentioned a little bit about like the different facets of Huna. And so there's like energy work, right? Where it might be similar to Reiki, where it's hands-on or distance, just the pure energy work. And then there's also the meditations, the techniques. There's also chanting and hula and all these other facets too. So we didn't even get to talk about it because we could talk for hours about, you know, all of the different aspects. But all of Huna, I believe, is kind of similar to yoga in that it's really designed to align the mind, the body, and spirit. And energy, it's just a small practice of that. And I think something that's fun, I've actually trained a lot of people who are trained in Reiki in Huna, and they notice a difference between Huna and Reiki just because of the lineage and the culture and the different ways that we do energy work. So I would encourage anybody that if you have done energy work to go explore other kinds, whether it's Huna or Reiki or other kinds, because it's so different, you know, and it's fun, I think, to explore and just to give your mind and your body that experience and that opportunity to do something if you feel called to it. You know, don't go force yourself to do energy work, but if you're interested in and it calls to you, like, do it. You know, there might be something in it for you. I didn't think I'd ever be into Huna, and then all of a sudden it was like I couldn't not, and now it's, you know, part of my daily practice. So that's something I would recommend.
What are a few of the differences that they notice between Reiki and Huna?
Some people have told me, well, part of it is in the actual practice of itself. So like in Huna, the energy practices, they are like these hand symbols and breath patterns that you do at the same time as you bring in the energy and you send it, right? And then the way that Reiki, I'm not trained in Reiki, so don't quote me on this. The way that Reiki is done is a little bit different in that like the energy is actually in the symbol. I think from where Huna, you can, once you build your connection with an energy and one of the symbols, you can just call it in and move it, and you don't have to use the hand and the breath pattern and all that anymore. So that's one thing. I think the other thing I've heard a lot about is like the way that the systems are set up. So Huna has more energy symbols than Reiki does. And then also people have mentioned to me that they feel it differently, like it feels deeper and more potent than the Reiki energy, which is just interesting, I guess, feedback. I don't know if it has to do with the fact that it's a 28 generation unbroken lineage or something else, but it just feels a little bit different. So yeah, I think there are probably a good amount of differences that I'm not even aware of. But I think the big part of it is that there are a lot of different types of energies within the Huna system of even just energy work, and they're all specific based on the lineage and how it was passed down. And that's very unique as compared to other energy systems.
Yeah.
And people experience that differently as a result.
Yeah. So with Huna, you said that the 28 generations so does each island have their own lineage with Huna, or is that one like the main one?
That's a good question. And I think that's a lot of unknown, actually, to be honest. I think there are, so the lineages that we have, so like the Bray James lineage, have been built based on who had access to what, and then who decided to put it together and to pass it on. I'm
Mhm.
sure there are tons of people out there, because from what I heard, I don't remember the exact story, but there was a point in time where a lot of different families had their own practices that they just had and they kept and they passed on to their own generations. And it sounds like some of them were documented, and then the king was able to save them and keep them and then pass them on later. And then other ones were not. So there was probably a lot out there that either didn't make it or is still kind of in its own little bubble that we're not even aware of. So I wouldn't say that the Huna that I am learning and that we practice is necessarily like the way, because it's just different pieces from the different lineages that, or the families that have come together to build this lineage. And I bet you there are probably tons of people out there that do have their own Huna, right? And their own lineage that has its own practices, or maybe even subsets of ours that I'm not aware of, that have lived on in their own ways. But as far as I know, this is the only like the bigger Huna workshop that's taught to this degree, as compared to others. But I do know you could probably find Huna trainings in different places. And some of them, as I mentioned, like we have the big one on the Big Island, and then we have other teachers like myself that have permission to teach smaller workshops, like half days or full days or weekend type trainings, as opposed to like a full on level 1 9-day immersion experience, you know. So you might see that there are different types of workshops where you learn different aspects of Huna, but there isn't really like a systematized, this is the one way that Huna is taught, because, you know, it's ancient knowledge and it's very
Fluid.
exactly, as energy is.
What so are there any books or references that you would suggest people could go explore if they're interested?
Definitely. There are a couple books I know you can even find on Amazon about Huna. I can't remember the exact titles, but if you type in Huna and Tad James or Dr. Matt James, they both have their own books they've written that are from this lineage, and they talk about Uncle George and Papa Bray and Daddy Bray and the whole how this lineage came about. So I definitely would recommend those ones. I haven't heard of any others. Like actually, people have told me that it's hard to find books. You might find there's one guy that he did research from a different school of thought. So it wasn't part of ours. I think his name is Max Long. You might see him if you do some research too, but he is not affiliated with our lineage. It was something separate. But there's not a whole ton of written stuff out there yet. You know, I think a lot of the people that are now studying it and training in it are starting to do more writing and proving techniques through dissertations and things like that, which is cool. But you won't find a whole ton. But the two that I would recommend are the books by Dr. Matt James and Tad James. They have a couple really great ones that you can access.
And I'll link to all of that in the show notes so people can get them. And
Perfect.
now if I ever go to Hawaii again, which I'm sure we will get there with quarantine, with COVID, but I don't mean to make light of a really sad situation, but when I'm in Hawaii again, I'm going to start asking about it, because I'm sure you can, you know, you find some people on the island who, you know, work at different cool historic sites, and might be kind of a neat conversation to start talking about. It's really
it's something that I think even people that are like locals don't always know about, you know, but you never know who you'll find. You know, you might find an elder that has some ancient wisdom that's just waiting to be shared with you. So yeah, I definitely suggest doing your own research and seeing what else is out there.
So I got this this calendar from my good friend from Hawaii. She was on Kona, so that's the Big Island, right?
Yep.
So it is a calendar, and it's called Wild Heart. Wild Heart Artist Hawaii. It's kind of fun.
Cool.
It kind of looks funny when you're reading that, like the word, right?
Wild Heart Artist. Oh, I see. Because they blended the words.
The words really blend.
Artist.
So it's a cool calendar because I think it features different artists from Hawaii, but it like goes into these neat quotes for like each month. And so when I met you, Jocelyn, I think I got this calendar, but I began to like read the different quotes, and there was one that that really stuck out to me, and it says, "In a world of duality, we must remember that by uncovering our beginnings, we also discover our end. The journey is simply mastering the art of being in the now."
Ooh.
And so when I read that, it like really sparked something in my mind from my yoga training with the Yoga Sutras and with duality. And then when I started talking to you, and you said that there's a lot of crossover or similarities between yoga and Huna, I was like super intrigued, because this is just kind of showing that there's such a history and there's so much wisdom in the Huna practice that
Absolutely.
we it kind of resonates with us all. But yeah, it's a really cool
something that actually came up for me when you were sharing that with me is, and something I love about Huna is that they say many paths lead to the light. And they also say, think not that all wisdom is in your school. And so they kind of acknowledge that there's like, you know, there's source and there's energy and there's all these different paths of connecting to it and aligning with yourself. And Huna is just a way, you know, it's not the way. And that's, I love that you mentioned like what we've been talking about, the commonalities between yoga and Huna, because they're just paths to the light, you know. So I think it reminds me that there's all these infinite ways, and whatever you're called to is probably for you, you know. If it feels good and it is good, then go for it, because it's probably something that you need to unlock that within yourself so that you can just keep leveling up, you know.
Yeah, I do know, Jocelyn. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
When you finish a Huna session, do you say something? You know, like in yoga, you say namaste. Do you say anything?
We don't have like a saying for the end of an energy session. We do have sayings that we say at the end of groups and classes and things. We have a couple different sayings that we say. One is malama pono, and then another is aloha ke akua, aloha ke kahi I ke kahi, and ahui ho. Ahui ho is the one that you probably would hear most often, and that means until we meet again, because there's no way to say goodbye in Hawaiian. So it's always like, we'll meet again, whether it's in this lifetime or another, you know. So ahui ho might be something that you'd say when you're parting ways, or if you're leaving a session or ending a class or something. That one you might hear somewhere.
So ahui ho.
Ahui ho.
Ahui ho.
Yeah, because we as a hui will meet again.
Yeah, we'll meet again, Jocelyn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
This is awesome. If you enjoyed this week's episode, please show the Yogakane podcast some love and subscribe and leave a 5-star rating on whichever platform you're listening on. This allows me to bring you wonderful guests like Jocelyn. And please connect with Jocelyn. All of her contact and social media info can be found in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening. Aloha.